Welcome to the Small Business Surgeon Podcast, the show where we dissect the businesses of top producers, examine their growth strategies, and share with you the bare bones of their success. I am your host, Samuel Smith, and I'm glad you're here. Let's operate. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's episode of the Small Business Surgeon Podcast. And guys, today's guest is right up my alley. I'm looking forward to speaking to him very much. He is an executive coach and a man who teaches clarity, confidence, and courage to people trying to leave their mark in the world. Please welcome to the show, Steve McReady. Steve, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Samuel. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for that intro. That was very nice.
You're welcome, man. It's my aim to give every guest an introduction that makes them smile, so you can feel it easier telling your story to the audience, mate. Welcome to the show.
Well, again, for having me, and you can definitely check that box. So I'm smiling. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right, so man, let's go over really briefly who you are, because I love the idea that you've managed to figure out a way to teach clarity, confidence, and courage. Like some of the things that most all of us, especially ones going on an entrepreneurial journey, we all seem to lack. So Steve, tell us just a little bit about yourself to get this show going.
Well, there's certainly all things that I have lacked at various points in my life and have had to learn to get better at, and have come to recognize that there's a lot of folks out there who struggle with these things for any number of reasons. And so as I've learned more about them, learn more to help people with all the noise in our heads and to sort that noise out and to turn it into something constructive. The great thing about my work is it lets me take people who have big ideas, who want to do big things, who are really big thinkers, much smarter in a lot of ways than I am, and to help them be able to take those things and get them from a place where they're stuck in their head or limited and really put into the world so they can do those big things and make the world a better place, which is something we need more of right now, I think.
Absolutely. I think that the best way to make the world a better place is to help each individual become the best version of themselves and watch it permeate through society. I think it's a cultural shift we're looking for more than anything.
Yeah. And I think there's a ripple effect that definitely can come from that. And that's it's one of the fun things about the work. I don't always see where those ripples go. I hear about them occasionally, but I've learned to just have faith that it's like my job is to put good stuff out into the world to support and serve people, and then let them go do what they do with that, and trust that that's going to ultimately do something that helps things move in the right direction.
That's why I'm excited to talk to you today, is because we both look to similar goals there in helping people to overcome that stuff that's holding them back. Dude, how did you get into this? Because it definitely wasn't a career I fell into, and I see you've got an amazing background. I see you're into music. I see you've got all of this this knowledge. How did you land on psychotherapy, dude?
Well, it was kind of a roundabout path. So I was one of those people who, as a kid, it was like every year I had a different idea about what I wanted to do when I grow up. It was like everything from like an architect to an airplane pilot to all this stuff. And then when I actually went to college at the time, my plan was to do a dual degree program in chemistry and creative writing, because I really my dream career was like cool to be a writer. But I figured chemistry was probably more practical and realistic. And so that was like kind of probably the main thing. That didn't survive very long, as I in college promptly found that I was actually not as good at either of those things as I had thought. And then I was like, okay, that's not going to work.
Right.
And then college was for me really challenging, because it was probably the first time in my life I was very much in over my head and had to mostly focus on just like, how do I get through and pass my classes? And so when I got out of college, I had really no idea. It was just like, just get a job.
Did you you stuck with the 2 degrees, or did you switch up?
I did not stick with the 2 degree. No, okay. I know my degree is in American studies. So
okay.
Yeah, totally different kind of thing. It was cool stuff. I had thought briefly during college about being an attorney, spent some time in a law office, and went, no, that's not right either. So I literally got out of college. My dad was like, you can hang out at my place for a while. I'm like, cool. He was living in San Diego at the time. I spent the summer there sitting on his couch watching baseball. And then he was like, I'm moving to Florida, so I don't know what you're doing. And so it was like, oh, okay. Got myself, a temp job. Eventually what happened is, one of the things I'd also been into pretty consistently is computers. And essentially taught myself enough stuff and got just a little bit of work experience. So I was able to get eventually a full-time job doing IT work. And I did that for several years and I found it intellectually challenging and fun, but emotionally really unfulfilling, and a lot of aspects about it didn't really fit well for me.
Right.
And so that led to a point where I was at the time in my late 20s. So kind of I like to jokingly call it an early midlife crisis. And was having a hard time with that, some other things in my life,
You
went
know,
to about
I think that the 20s, mate, is that's probably one of the hardest times to be an IT professional because of that emotional void that you get. Like when you're later on in life, I quite like shutting the door and being an IT professional because I can go live in an emotional void and nothing bothers me. But I could totally understand why you would want to get out of that career at that age. It's very isolating sometimes working in tech.
yeah, it definitely could be, and there were other aspects to the way that the industry worked. I was working for a systems integrator, and there were things just about the industry I was like, "This doesn't feel great to me." So it was just a real, real struggle, and
Right.
so kinda hit the wall there, got some help, got some support. One of the things I started doing is some career counseling work, so I was like, "Well, if I'm not gonna do that, what am I gonna do?" I don't know. I'd convinced myself I was too old to go back to school. I'd also insisted when I graduated from undergrad, I'm never going back to school, and, that began the period of a time where almost every "I'm never going to," came back and bit me in the you know what for a while. Ended up eventually recognizing that, "Oh, psychotherapy is actually a career that in a lot of ways could fit me well because of the independence of it, the being, the environment of it. A psychotherapy office, at least if it's done well, is a very calming, relaxing, low energy space, which I works for me as an
I mean,
introvert.
just look at your background, dude. Look at this. Look at the workspace you've created for yourself. I mean, it looks
Thank you.
just
Yeah, well,
like that. You know, it looks
yeah.
relaxing and calming and all that.
And I took a lot of pride when I finally got, so I ended up going to grad school, right, to get a master's in, and then to get licensed. And I opened my private practice in 2006. I'd been working in an agency until then, and I took a lot of pride actually in creating the environment. Actually, one of the most fun and effortful but fun things I ever did was getting my first practice office together. I spent an entire summer looking for furniture, looking for decorations and all this because I was just really so focused on the power of environment, and I knew how much it affected me, and I'm like, "I'm gonna make this space special." And I think that's a thing I'm always mindful of because I am affected by my environment,
Right,
uh,
right.
you know? And it was just a cool thing too of this ownership thing. Like, my dad had gone into business for himself when I was a teenager, and I was like, "There's things about this that seem pretty cool," especially the independence piece.
Hmm.
And so that's where I got into psychotherapy, and it was one of those things that was such it was hard to get to the point of being licensed and getting out on my own, and I didn't know what the hell to do as far as getting clients go, but the freedom and the independence and the work itself was so much more fulfilling and meaningful and powerful to me. There was just this radical change, and work went from something like you do to make money and whatever, to like something I felt was like, "Okay, this is really powerful and important stuff." And
Yeah,
now I
yeah.
figure out how do I actually make a living at it.
Dude, that's a transition that I think we all have to go through. Especially the guys that stick at this and stay in the entrepreneur space. You know, when I first started out, it was all about money. And then at some point in a career, there's a switch over, it happens, and you begin to focus on the impact. And the money comes because of the impact. And when you realize that, it makes finding your mission and pursuing your passion a whole lot easier.
For sure. For sure. And that was certainly true in the psychotherapy realm, right? Because at first it was, and I think everyone goes through some version of this when they start a business, right? It's at first the like, anybody who wants to come in and talk to me and is willing to give me money, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
And but over time, that of course isn't a great strategy because one, I certainly wasn't able to help everyone with every problem. And I found pretty quickly that certain types of problems spoke to me more and certain types of people resonated with me more. And as I started learning about marketing, which I needed to do, and started thinking about this and hearing about things, idea of like niching and all of that.
Right,
And
right.
again, went through the same dilemma I think everyone does of like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do that, but it's what if I'm cutting off potential clients and and all of that, and wrestled with that for a long time, but really saw in my therapy practice power of committing to a niche.
Oh
And
yeah.
as I worked with over the years, making it narrower and narrower, saw two things happen. One, it just became easier to get clients. But two, the clients I worked with, I both enjoyed the work more and they stuck with me for longer. So
Yes.
it was a perfect fit. So like there was all kinds of ways in which the ROI on that commitment was huge.
And I think a lot of people miss that because they're very scared to to not take work. And like if you've got a barber, for example, that is scared to raise his rates because he's going to lose clients, well, the time you spend raising your rates and focusing on your ideal client, all the clients you lose are the ones that aren't very happy to be paying anyway. And so it's this it goes against your intuition as an entrepreneur. But when you
Mhm.
start cutting out people that aren't ideal to work with, all that is left is your ideal client. And how long did that process take for you? What was that like?
Like, I mean, it happened in stages, right? There was for the first year or so was just kind of fumbling around and trying to even figure out some things. Then what happened over the next several years is I made some refinements, but
Mhm.
I was like half committed and I saw improvement, but not enough. And then when I hit another lull in my practice, I was like, okay, let me take a look at things. And what I did is I actually did some pretty thorough data analysis because I was trying to understand like what are the mechanics of this business. And because at the time I was doing both one-on-one work, but I was doing couples work as well, which I was glad and is couples work is was at the time at least a very easy thing to get. And so it was a very easy way to bring in business.
Right.
Learned is a couple that it wasn't as fulfilling to me. It wasn't really my sweet spot. The other main part of my practice was working with what I called and people pleasers,
Hmm.
and really love that work. They're folks, it resonates with me. They are again some of those folks we're talking about who aren't necessarily confident. They're not necessarily
Right.
clear, and helping them get that because these are great people with really caring, folks. So that was really the powerful work. But I was like, yeah, but this couple's work, it's bringing a lot of money. It's an easy way to get business. But when I looked at it, I got a really clear understanding, not just of just the straight revenue, but how much time and effort does it take to get one of these clients? How long do they stick around and other things? And what I learned is that it was just not smart from a like basic financial standpoint to be
Right.
doing couples work. And that made it a little bit easier to be like, all right, I'm gonna cut that down. And so I stopped marketing it. I then stopped taking just outside, clients that were couples. I still took some referrals that were,
Mhm.
but then eventually I got to the point where I was just like, I'm not doing couples anymore. And so it's like it kind of with a lot of these things I found for me, I often do best when I implement the changes gradually or in phased stages.
Mhm.
It's like I'm going to take this piece and move it away. And I think for me, that's been the balance of how do I push myself into a new area, but not so much that my brain freaks out and goes, "You can't do that. It's going to be the end of the world." Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
yeah, it took some time. Eventually, it got to the point where I really just full on committed to it. And once I really did that, I did some things to my website, made it super clear. It's like this do. It was one of those things I feel like a cliche. It was like literally overnight, my practice transformed, and it's like because it kind of did.
Right, right. I mean, you stopped taking clients that were a drain on you, and like I think people they forget that not just in your business, but in all businesses, there's an emotional cost of working with people, and it can either be a benefit to you or an expense to you, and they like especially when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, when I'm working with business owners, like the amount of emotion that I
Yeah.
take on of theirs that I had no idea. Like if you say, what are some of the hardest things you're going to face as a consultant, you wouldn't think absorption of emotions would be anywhere on the list, and yet it's right there at the top. Can you speak on that any? I see you
Yeah.
laughing at
Oh,
me.
yeah. I'm not laughing at you. I'm
Like
going,
with
yeah.
me,
Oh,
yeah,
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 dude, you
yeah,
are right on, man.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's one of those things where I think learning how to both be empathetic and compassionate and care, but not be so hooked to those other emotions is hard. And so one of the things that for me I found is I've had to do a lot of practice around, I'll say, emotional detachment in general, because that's something that I struggled with in earlier years related to some things in my childhood too. And so I've done a lot of conscious work on that, which certainly made me better equipped to step into this sort of work, both in the therapy and then in the coaching as well.
Mhm.
Because again, I see the same thing. And so it's a thing where there's element of it, my brain's pretty good at separating it. And at the same time, I realize there's definitely times, some days where at the end of the day, I'm like, I just feel kind of drained or
Yeah.
weighed down. And it's like, what's up with that? And for me, this is where I find, from a self care standpoint, creative activity to be so huge. At times it's been art. These days it's primarily music.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
what I find is it gives me a way to take whatever is going on and just kind of let it out in a nonverbal, non-language way, that still seems to help process it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a thing I found super useful, and not even useful, it's truly essential. If I'm not doing that regularly, stuff starts to accumulate and then it gets heavy and then I get irritable and then I'm impatient with clients, which is not a good strategy because sometimes this process is slow and messy, as you well know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think it took me a long time to realize that music too is an energy transfer. It's a way to take something from inside of you and project it out into the world. And I see you on your about page with a Paul Reed Smith there, and it's a very good looking guitar. Tell me a little bit about your musical journey. Let's get off of business for a little bit. Let's get
yeah,
playing
no,
some
actually,
music.
this is a good, because this is actually, I think, will it'll relate to things, but it's like, so music, like ever since I was a kid, I've always loved listening to music, and I, like you, the energy aspect of it, it's been a thing that I found so powerful in helping with moods. I have playlists for me for different
Yeah.
situations. If I need to put myself up, if I need to like get myself out of a depression or whatever, I have all kinds of different playlists built over the years. Guitar. So I had a friend in childhood, and he moved away for a time, then he came back, and he had gotten into music and played guitar.
Right.
And so he had a couple guitars, and I remember the first time I saw him play it and held one, I was like, "This is cool.
Hmm.
I want to do this." And so he sold me one of his for cheap, and I was like, "Okay, this doesn't look that hard." Um, it is. And at that point in my life, I was used to things coming easy to me. I
Right.
hadn't learned yet about, how to work hard at stuff, and I hadn't learned that, like, some things you're not good at because you just haven't done them much, and it doesn't mean you can't be. It means you're just not yet, and I had thought, if you're not good at it, you suck at it. It's just like a very fixed mindset kinda thing.
Oh man, I wish I
So I
could
played with
help.
it,
I wish I could just play that over and over for people, dude. Like, you're not good at it
right?
because you haven't practiced yet. Like, just pick it up
Yeah.
and get the hours in. Come on, man. The number
Well,
of people, I wish I could do music. I wish I could play. I'm like, just, well, pick it up and go.
I know.
Welcome to Intermission.
So, I don't run commercials on the show, but if I did, I'd remind you about our free community on School, the Clinic. A place where you can learn from me, the small business surgeon, and get direction, support, and accountability from others in the group. To create your free account, go to followsam.live and click Join the Clinic. All right, thanks for that. Back to the show.
Thank you. Come again.
Well, and that was the thing. So, like, I had this on and off relationship with guitar for, God, 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
where I would play with it for a while, kind of, I guess I can't do this. I guess I'm not musical. I guess I'm not blah 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 blah. I had the same thing about creativity with art. And then at one point in my life, so I was just going through a divorce, and I was at a place where I had, one, a little extra time and energy, and two, was like, I am so sick of this, like, wrestling with this nut. So I'm like, I'm either gonna do it or I'm not going to. And by then I'd learned enough about growth, about improvement, about mindset and stuff. I was like, I've been approaching this the wrong way.
Do you mind
And
me
so
asking how old you were?
God, I was yeah, at the time, I think I was probably 41.
Okay.
Is that about right?
Okay.
In early 40s.
Okay. All
Um,
right. Sorry. Please carry on. I
yeah,
was
no,
just interested.
no worries. Yeah. And so what I did is I made this commitment to myself. And I tried this with a couple other things and seen some effectiveness. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it here. I'm going to, for a minute of 15 minutes a day, play guitar every day. Now, that means I'm going to pick it up and do something with it. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be practicing. I'm just going to do something with it. I'm going to spend at least 15 minutes a day. I can spend more. I can do whatever I want. So I created this system where it was like, I at least have the rule of the consistency and what have you. And I left it free enough because I don't do well with real rigid structure. Feel repressed by it. And I did that. I was, I'm going to do that for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I can do whatever. And by the time I had done it for 2 months, a couple things had happened. One, it had started to become a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I had been able to get through some of the points where I'd gotten stuck before.
Right.
Things like chord changes, right? Which anyone who's played guitar knows at first learning these chord changes, you're like, how do I get my fingers to do this?
Oh yeah, you got to bend them in such weird
You gotta
ways.
bend them,
You
it's
know.
weird. You got to build up the calluses. And I
Yeah.
got through enough of that that I could actually like make good sound. I could like, oh, I could actually play like a riff and do something like, and it was kind of like, oh, okay. And so by then it had started to become still challenging, but fun. And so I
Right.
gained enough ground. The whole way I did it is I basically created a game and a rule that was workable and doable and then built from there.
Right.
And that's, I think, the thing that I see people get trapped in is they come up with these big ideas and they're like, I'm going to go all in and all that. I'm like, no, start with the smallest thing that you can and will do consistently and then build up. Because at the end of the day, it is the routine, the repetitiveness, and doing something that's workable that is going to get you there. Because otherwise, you'll just never get any momentum going.
There's two things points I got to make here, dude. Number one, that's exactly how I teach. And I've come across it like from the organic learnings of my life. I'm from being around mentors, and I don't have a psychotherapy degree. My qualifications in artificial intelligence, but like learning that small actionable steps daily consistently over time is what leads to success, and understanding that. And then secondly, you and I have the exact same guitar journey, except for I was 39 and
Okay.
I'm 43 now, and I'm good enough at guitar to where I could stand on stage and play with the band and all of it. And I wanted to play it since I was 12, and it was that exact same thing. I'm not getting any younger. When am I going to do it? And I put 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. And 4 years later, I'm accomplished at it. But it took me a lifetime of saying, "Oh, I can't play guitar; it's too complicated." And then it took me 4 years of working on it consistently to be good. And like, I think people miss that. They miss that, dude. You are not going to be good at the first thing you pick up. How long did you wear training wheels on a bicycle? And now look
Right.
at you. You know.
I think you're right, and there's a lot of reasons why that happens. We don't see that model for one. It's not how it's shown to us, and no one ever talks about it, and so it just isn't validated enough. And I don't think we get help in figuring out the whole thing. Is like, how do you find, to me, the right thing that is taking your motivation and engaging it, but making it where it's easy enough to do that you'll do it, but hard enough to do that you'll learn, right? It's that stretch
Yeah.
zone and finding that spot and then building something it iterates. It's like that's the key. And you can do that with anything. Did it with guitar, I did it with art, I've done it with physical things. And you can do it with a business too. But that requires giving ourselves permission to suck at things.
Mm-hmm.
It requires being patient. I think it also, at least for me with music, part of it was it required me to stop comparing myself so much
Mm-hmm.
and to use others as inspiration or ideas, but allow myself to take from that rather than go, I've got to be like that.
Yeah, like the best way to get better at something is to surround yourself with people that are better than you at it.
Right.
That and for years you would have, excuse me, you would have feelings of envy and jealousy and oh, he's so good. And then when you stop and you realize that most people that are good just love to teach and they love to show you how to do things. And if you show up as a willing participant and a student that'll practice, they'll teach you all these things, you know?
Well, totally. We all like to share stuff. We like to share what we know. We like to do that. And I think a lot of us realize it's like there's helping someone. We've all felt, I think, where we would just like couldn't do something, didn't know how to do something, felt stuck, felt kind of powerless. And
Mhm.
no one likes feeling powerless.
Right.
It's one of just the most horrible feelings. And so that's the thing for me is learning as I got with my psychotherapy work and now with my coaching being able to help people feel more capable and more powerful is, from a fulfillment standpoint, it's amazing, but it's also just great to watch because you get to see these people who have all this energy and these ideas freed up, right? So they can go do stuff. And it's amazing. And I think we forget that there are people out there, people want to share, people want to
Oh
help,
yeah.
people will
Yeah.
teach if we give them the opportunity and we're willing to be vulnerable and say, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. Can you help?
And that's why we get emotionally engaged. It's because when we see the students succeed and we see the joy in their face, we feel that joy and we love it. There's no better feeling than watching the lights come on in somebody that's been struggling with some stuff.
Totally.
That's why the emotion is there. Steve, let me ask you this, man, because this is a question. Um, Well, this is a topic that I found a unique way around through my mentors and through the power of suggestion and daydreaming and stuff. But it's a very common problem with entrepreneurs. Um, how do you help people decide what they want to do? Like,
Mhm.
because most people come to me and they say, I'm stuck. I say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know.
Mhm.
All right. Well, what would you like to be when you grow up? Well, I don't know. And like they've got a job, they pay the bills, or they've got a business, they pay the bills, and there's nothing past. I just want to pay the bills this month. But how do you get in there and help those guys?
The things I like to do, it is such a common sticking point for people. And I think part of the reason it's a sticking point is it starts to feel like a math problem. And you've got to get
Hmm.
the right answer. Math
Yeah,
problems have the right answer, right? 2 + 2 is 4.
correct.
But the reality is this isn't that kind of problem. Because for any of us, there's more than one thing we can do that will both serve the world, serve us, and be aligned. So what I like to do is start by asking people things like, what are the sorts of life you want to have?
Hmm.
What is it that you want your journey of life to feel like and to look like and to have? And what is it that you want it not to have? Because that's another thing too, right? If we start eliminating options,
Yeah,
make it easier to choose, because people just get overwhelmed when there's too many options. And so when we do that, then we start to get you start to narrow it down. And then from there, it starts to be like, well, what are some experiments you could run to dial this in a little bit more, right? What are some things that you could try? And like, I didn't realize it at the time, but going into psychotherapy was not the final destination. At the time, I thought it was,
right.
but as I did more, I was like, well, this is not quite. It's like good, but not quite right. And then I found coaching, and it's like, yeah, here we go. Because now I can operate in a way that speaks to more of the really empowering in a way that can be more impactful to the world on a broader scale. Like, yeah, that was the missing piece. But sometimes it takes multiple steps too. And so I think it's often more important to think about what direction do we want to go?
Hmm.
And for me, it was like, yeah, empowering and helping people, totally the right direction. It's just been then refining it about in what way, with what problem,
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. So that's the way I like to get people unstuck and give them permission to just, and really get them to give themselves permission to like, this may be a process. It may be a little messy. There may be a couple of wrong turns. That's
yeah.
not a big deal.
No, and they think like in my experience, they think if they write something down, then that's it. And I'm like, no, no, no. This is a living document. You can change this. Like we can change our mind. We can change directions. We can pivot whenever we want, and giving them the permission to actually make the change. It seems like there's just a stigma around having multiple careers, and yet most of us change career every 4 or 5 years these days.
Yeah, I think I don't know where that idea comes from. I think part of it is we humans in general, we like clarity, like to know, like, here's
Mhm.
what it is. It feels safe to us. But the problem is it also becomes limiting at some point. And so, yeah, I think when we start to think of like, I'm going to be this thing, yeah, it becomes it's a big obligation. It's like, well, am I going to do that the rest of my life or whatever? And it's more like, what direction do you want to go next? And that is points you somewhere, but it makes it more freeing. And then it's about, yeah, starting to take action and then building on that action. And really, I think for people understanding, but I see this all the time with clients, you probably do too. People are like, they're trying to get to a point where something's like finished, like, okay, then I want this to be solved and it's gone. And I got bad news for you. You might get dialed into where you stay on course most of the time. You recognize course where you get off course quicker and you can course correct faster.
Hmm.
The idea that you're going to get these dialed in and it's never going to, that's not how humans are.
Hmm.
Life is too complex and humans are too human for that to be how
Yeah.
it's going to go.
you just see problems differently, you see solutions differently, but you deal with problems every single day. And the difference is a guy running an 8-figure company is going to be dealing with 6 and 7-figure problems, and a guy running a 6-figure company is going to be dealing with 2, 3, 4-figure problems. And it's the same. You wake up every day to solve problems. So like learn to love the process is kind of what I say there.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because we spend most of the time on the journey. The destinations are just checkpoints along the way. They're cool.
Yes.
They can be fun, but they're just checkpoints, man. If you do not find a sustainable, enjoyable process for you, life's going to be pretty miserable, and you're always going to be like, "Are we there yet?" And it's like,
Yeah.
that doesn't work, you
That's
know. And so, yeah,
and it's a very well rehearsed saying is that all of life's hard, so pick the hard that you're going to love, pick the one you're going to enjoy,
totally. Right.
and like building what I've built's been really hard, but I've loved every minute of it. I love the reactions I get, and I love the clients I get to work with. I never once thought I'd be a consultant ever. It was not even on my mind, and now I'm more of a mentor than anything, which is the strangest thing to me. But it's all come from doing little bits over and over and over and moving the impact of what I do to the forefront of the conversation.
Totally.
So I got a question for you, especially as a psychotherapist that deals, with entrepreneurs. Um, we all know failure is a huge part of success, and it's a huge building block towards the foundations of a strong entrepreneur. What are some things that you've learned along the way that you can help with entrepreneurs to help them handle failures and setbacks and know that, hey, it's going to be okay?
Right. So I think so much stuff here, right? But one of the things is really helping people to not to be so identified with the failure as if it's like they're a failure because a thing they did failed, right? There's so much in any venture, in almost anything we do. There's plenty that's out of our control.
Yes.
You can do all the right things and something can still blow up because of some unforeseen circumstance. One of the reasons I sometimes talk with folks about golf as a metaphor for life is, one, because I like golf, but two, because there's a lot of ways in which it actually is representative. You can make a great swing, but the ball happens to land on a sprinkler head and bounces into the pond. You're like, well, did you make a bad shot? No, you just got
Right.
unlucky,
Right.
right? Sometimes that happens. So we've got to detach from that. That's one. I think another is really recognizing we failed before and it hasn't killed us.
Right.
This one's probably not going to either. And, giving ourselves space to sure feel disappointed, feel hurt, feel frustrated, even, feel what you feel, but be careful that you just don't get so attached to it. And then recognize that there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of value and data there, right? At the
Oh
end of the
yeah.
day, you can consider it an experiment. Like I often talk about this, like think about how scientists work, right? They run an experiment, they
Hmm.
gather data,
Hmm.
then they find their experiments. And if we start to look at it that way, it detaches us a bit from the emotion.
Yeah.
It helps us to see, to understand these systems. And you understand I'm building an iterative system where I'm going to do things, stuff's going to happen. I'm going to gather data, I'm going to learn, I'm
Hmm.
going to apply it the next time. You'll see that is going to build a spiral for you
Yeah.
that goes up.
Yeah, it's so funny that you've mentioned that, and so essentially, the way we teach and the way I learned is this triangle: build, measure, learn, and then it goes up one: build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. So it's this triangle spiral going up and up. You build it, you put it out into the world, you build your minimum viable product, you push it out, you measure the data, the feedback, you measure everything that comes back, you learn, you build it again, you send it out again, and some businesses that can take 18 months of
Yeah.
constant iterations of tweaking, of getting it right on the market and getting everything in the right place. And you look and you say, well, brick and mortar, it's been 3 years and they're only just profitable. But the first 2 years of that was learning, what was going to work in that market. And I think if people can detach themselves from this is a failure and I am a failure, it's that saying I am a failure in your head, and not understanding that, no, this is a process.
But it's a process. Totally, it's a process. And the other part is people get too attached to revenue as the end all be all measurement.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, I get it. Like we all supposed to pay. So I'm not saying to be dismissive of it,
Right.
but the idea that the only value that comes from the thing is how much revenue did you generate? I'd be like, no, what lessons did you learn? And how
Yeah,
can you use those? Because sometimes you're going to get lessons that are more valuable than any of the revenue.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lesson I had a commercial real estate development I was working on go bad and collapse, and it cost me well into six figures. But you say, is that a failure? Because I've never had another commercial deal go bad. Like, so that was my price of entry, and for the money I paid and the experience I got, that was a lot cheaper than going to college to learn commercial real estate. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I
uh,
think we love to label stuff because it defines things and it makes them clear for us. And there's again, comfort in that. The problem is it also can become limiting. And so we've got to be really, really careful. And I think if we can stop being so judgmental about these things as it's this or it's that, and instead come from a place of curiosity of like, what's here? What can I take from this? How can I make use of this? Where is there value in this? And that's easier said than done, of course. But when you can do that, there's always good stuff to be pulled out. And sometimes the most valuable stuff is really kind of hidden and buried within the failures.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I like to see it as a video game almost. And if you get to the end of the level and you fight the boss and you lose, you learned how to fight the boss, and you go fight that boss again, and you might win this time, or you might learn a little bit more about how to fight the boss. But eventually, if you lose enough times, you'll learn how to beat the boss, and then he drops his weapons, and then you're well equipped for the next level, and off you go. Now I've got your attention. Just take a minute and pause. Imagine your business running the way it's supposed to. Your inbox is cleared, your social media posts are scheduled, leads are being called in real time, all while you're meeting for lunch with your newest client. You're free to focus on what actually matters: growing your company, closing deals, building your brand. A virtual assistant can transform how you work, and that is where I can help. If you are ready to see how a vetted, trained virtual assistant can take your business to the next level, go to followsam.live and just click on that big green button. It really is that simple. All right, thanks for listening. Back to the show.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely true. And that's, you know, again, there's certain things we have to be mindful of, but I think there is, often we can restart the game more often than it feels like we can. And
Yeah,
that at the end of the day is one of the biggest things, is just learning how to create just enough space from your feelings so that they are not driving you. Because very, very rarely do you want your feelings to be as much of a driving force as they are for many people. It's not that
right.
they're not, they're incredibly important. Like, you have to learn how to parse through the
Hmm.
noise that they make and find the actual value and figure out how to incorporate it. And that requires a lot of mental and emotional strength. It also requires a lot of patience
Yep.
and slowing down, which is a pretty hard thing these days.
Dude, I use a do and done chart, and I get to see my little rewards every day, and I have a list of things that I do every single day, regardless. Because I know that if I do each one of these, if I make three outreach calls to three different clients, if I go for a walk, if I drink a gallon of water, if I write down what I'm grateful for, all these things, I just operate like a little robot, just checking off boxes. And when you do that consistently over time, like, it's just win after win after win. And it's not like I'm an emotionless robot. I still feel feelings. But when you can take those feelings and go, all right, I'm going to put those in my pocket, I'm going to look at my list, I'm going to check the next thing off my list. Oftentimes, you can overcome a lot of bad feelings when you look at a list full of wins and you go, well, you know what? I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for all those wins we had. So yeah, I feel like I need to ask you another question. So, talking of lists,
Yeah.
how do you set yourself and how do you set your clients up to have a productive and yet engaging and valuable day? Because we're not little robots. How do you set that up?
Right. I think it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
First off, what it is going to be like the structure for a productive day is going to be different for everyone.
Uh-huh.
And so the first thing I like is we've got to understand ourselves. What is our energy flow during the day? Right. And how do we set things up for that? Because if you ignore that, you're essentially asking yourself to like do something that's the equivalent of, how do you drive this 50-mile uphill road trip with a gallon of gas in the car? Like, good luck. right? Don't do it then. That's not the time to do it. You
Right.
need to look at that. So that's one. I think another one is about finding again the right balance of structure versus flexibility that fits you, your personality, your work style. The thing I see is people either have just a list they're working off of, and if that list isn't clearly prioritized and set up, it can be a problem.
Mm.
Or if it's too long, it can cause a lot of
Yeah.
upset to people. But at the same time, I've seen people who do they schedule every minute, and when you do that, the instant something unexpected happens, you're kind of
Mhm.
screwed. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you got to find it like this balance, right? It's like, so I have buffer zones,
Uh-huh.
or in my day. And I do my calendaring largely based on, not exactly priority, but it's more about context than about things. It's not like, okay, this is personal stuff. This is work stuff. It's like, this stuff's really critical. This stuff is important, but can be moved around at whatever
Mhm.
time it fits. And this stuff is like, if I get to it, cool. If not, no big deal to push it off. Cause that helps me as I go through my day to go, all right, I need to make some shifts here.
Mhm.
What's going on? And it makes it really quick for me to adapt and adjust to make sure if I have to sacrifice something, I sacrifice
Yeah.
the right thing
Dude.
versus something that, that I shouldn't.
Yep.
And so again, it's different for everyone. And I think that's part of the thing is understanding there's no lack of people selling systems. Here's the system. Like, no, that's just a way they sold a book. And there's a
Right.
lot of tools in it that you can use, but you've got to take them and adapt them for
Yes.
you, your personality,
Yes.
your energy flow. And that's a big part of what the work I do is helping people dial that in and be patient with themselves while they work on getting it instead of being like, why haven't I
100%.
gotten this yet? Like,
Dude, like, I think people are, because when I first learned to do this, there was a lot of rigidity within a calendar. A lot. You stick to your calendar, stick to your calendar, stick to your calendar. And over time, what I found is better is in the mornings, I like about 3 hours to myself. I'll do the school run, I'll take my boys, I'll read, I'll drink coffee, I'll go work out. And so even though my day starts most days about 5 o'clock, my work day doesn't start about 8:30, right? And then I do my heavy lifting before 1 o'clock. And then my afternoons is podcasts and recording content. So all the heavy stuff is out of the way by 1 o'clock. I'm done. I've got my workout in, my coffee, all my heavy lifting. And then from 1 o'clock to whenever I go to bed, is working on the things that need to be done in a structured order, but things that I enjoy and I don't find quite heavy, because recording content and podcasts and stuff for me is quite fun, you know. But I think that you can get more done with 4 properly focused, structured hours between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock. You can get more done than most people get done like during a day. I think I forget just how little I got done when I worked in an office for a boss. And like, when all you've got to do is prepare one report a day and you can prepare the report in about 45 minutes, then, it gets a bit slack. And, you forget that, especially I think a lot of us work for ourselves because we don't want a boss. And then when we don't have a boss, we don't do any work because nobody's telling us what to do. That's a problem I face quite a lot.
Yeah, you could go both ways with that, or you could do the thing, and I've seen people do this too. And I did it first in my private practice. I was like, I remember one day I was out on a bike ride at like 10 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly was like racked with guilt, like I should be working. And I'm like, wait, dude, the whole reason you did this is so if you wanted to go for a bike ride at 10 a.m., you could plan your day to go for a bike ride at 10 a.m.
Correct.
And like learning how to do that and just owning that is so important. I have clients who exercise first thing in the morning. That's what I do. I have ones who exercise at the end of the day. I have ones who do it in the middle of the day. And it's like, because all of those are fine for some people. And
Right.
that's with so much of this, man. It's just giving yourself permission to not get it right the first time, to do trial and error, to try different things, and to just work on dialing it in and try things based on the things you're seeing other people do and build
Yes.
right formulation for
Yeah.
you. It's going to look different from almost everyone else.
Man, I wish I could underline that and shout it a little bit louder. Most people are looking for a system to plug into, and
Sure.
it's never that for me. For me, it's like, here's the system I use. Here's what works for me. Take the parts for that and put them into your life and work on your own system. You build your own dream life. You design it yourself. This is my life and this is how I do it. Take from this and create your own. And I think people are scared, Steve, honestly, to create their own, mate,
there's a vulnerability in it because someone might judge it, or what if it doesn't work, or what if whatever. Whereas, if you take something as like, well, here's this best-selling time management system, and you apply, well, it's a best-selling time management system, it has to be right. There's that
Yeah.
perceived safety in there, whether or not it works. When you say, here's how I work, here's what I do, it feels very vulnerable. I remember in my psychotherapy practice, I bit by bit started cutting off my evening appointments and changing what time of day I saw clients. I remember having other therapists be like, "Can you do that?"
Hmm.
It's my business. I can
Yeah.
do whatever I want. If
Yeah.
I get enough clients, it'll be my problem. But like, I can do what I want. But it took me really recognizing I'm not going to be doing well with these clients at that hour of the day, because once it gets past a certain point, like I'm just not focused enough. I'm not
Right.
attentive enough. It's just like, no, I'm way better off doing things early
Yeah.
and owning that, so but there's a vulnerability. People will judge, people will have opinions, and we see all these models about how to operate, and everyone's used to the 9 to 5,
Mhm.
model. Even though that's changing, it's still kind of there. So I
Well,
think
yeah.
that's the plan.
But I work every day from 6 a.m. ish to about 9 p.m. ish. But all throughout the day, I'm doing things I love to do. I'm getting my exercise in, I'm doing my reading, I'm journaling, I'm doing all the stuff you're supposed to do. So it's not like I'm at work. Again, my heavy lifting is those concentrated 4 hours where I get most of my business needle moving done. But then I get to write in the evenings. I get to work on fun stuff, and it doesn't feel like work because of the amount of passion involved.
Well, totally. And if what it really sounds like, what I would say I'm hearing is it's like you've got not so much work-life balance as much as work-life integration, where you've just
It,
kind of integrated. It's like, I live this life and I have these days, and work is a component of it, as is, dealing with getting my kids to school and back,
right,
as is
right.
doing all these things. And I think that's one of the opportunities that we can have when we're doing our own thing. But it takes some time, and it requires a weird mix of like discipline and also giving yourself flexibility to know that like some
Yeah.
days it's like, you know what? I don't have anything going on. I'm feeling kind of beat. I'm going to go see a movie because I can.
Yeah.
And then then I'm going to work on some stuff later after I get back. It's
Yeah.
like that feels very weird because we're trained to do so differently.
Yeah.
But for a lot of us, like taking a break midday to go do something like that. I do the same thing with music sometimes. I'm like, I'm gonna, play some music for an hour or whatever, and then I'll get back to it. And I'm like refreshed and recharged. It's like this is called being smart, man.
And again, I like the way you approach phasing out the idea of work-life balance, because I can't ever balance it right. But when I integrate it, when I take time out and I know that this time's reserved for my kids, and this time's reserved for my partner, and this time's reserved for clients, and this time's reserved for building stuff, and like when I do it like that, it feels like I'm accomplishing everything I set out to do, and it's a total integration. And then yeah, when I want to take a Sunday off and just go get a workout in and stick to my diet and read. And like some Sundays, I'll just lay on the couch and it's great. And I don't feel guilty at all because I'm still getting the stuff done that I set out to do. And I think that too many of us get lost in the hustle culture. You go work, 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 grind, 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 grind. And I'm like, dude, it's all a grind. So pick when you grind and pick when you live.
There's not enough focus on developing workable, sustainable strategies. Number one. Number two, finding the ones that work for you and how to integrate the things that matter. Like you, the being a parent role is an important one. It's an important part of my life. And
Hugely.
so,
Yeah.
there's like this block of an hour in the afternoon where it's like, well, I gotta, I'm gonna go get my daughter from school. I'm gonna catch up with her, see what happened with her day, and then I go back to sometimes seeing another client or two or doing some other stuff. And it one of the things that's nice about this day and age with how much work and a lot of aspects of work have changed is it's very viable to do that. You're right, where I can be like, okay, I can jump back and forth between things. But I also find for me, it helps make it more workable because I'm getting a little bit of a break. I'm getting a little bit of a shift, and learning how we do that is I think a really important thing for us is balancing work and play, or effort and recovery, or whatever, right? This kind of balancing back and forth is an important thing, and doing what you're talking about, I think, is a way of doing that a lot of people would do well to work on integrating.
Yeah, I just picked what works for me. And again, it was the realization that all of life's hard, right? You've got to get up and go to work every single day. Like my dad, my granddad, like they got up, they went to work every day, regardless. And so if you've got to go up to work every day, you've got to see your kids every day, you've got to eat right every day, you might as well figure a way to balance it all and integrate it all with each other and figure that out. And it's worth putting the time into.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Steve, mate, it's been a pleasure hanging out. We are almost up on time, and I hate to do this because I feel like we could talk for another hour. No, for real. Like, there's some guests where you're like, oh, for the love of God, hurry up. But like, there's other guests where you look down at the clock and an hour's gone. And you're like, oh goodness. And so you're one of the oh goodness guests, Steve. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I got a couple more questions for you, pal, and then I'll let you go. So, firstly, I'm a huge proponent of ongoing education. I believe that you can learn anything you put your mind to. And so with that in mind, what are some good books that you've read that have given you some amazing knowledge that you want to pass to the audience?
Oh man, so many.
I see the shelf behind you, dude. It's full
Right,
of
well, you see
them.
the yeah, well,
Mine,
and
mine
that's
is up. Mine is up here.
if you looked at my Kindle library, you'd see a whole bunch more too,
Yeah.
you know. So like, and one I'll just say this, I'm completely with you. Like, and we know this from the standpoint of like health and well-being, continuing to learn, continuing to challenge yourself is really good at a good way of fighting against aging. So that's another argument
Yeah.
for it. But
Yeah.
plus, yeah, learning new stuff, it lets you evolve and grow. So let's see. I could come up with any number of them. One of the books thinking about from a business standpoint that I'm a big fan of. Most people know this one. A lot of people have read it. It's Good to Great by Jim Collins. There's
Yeah.
just so many powerful concepts in it. It's really fascinating. And even though it's a business book and in a lot of ways kind of a hardcore business book, it's also super readable. That's one that I really love. I always tell people like really anything on behavioral economics is really powerful. So my introduction to that was Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely.
I'm gonna write that
That's
down.
uh,
Predictably irrational.
yeah, but there's a ton of books on that topic. Freakonomics is the one that I think most people
Oh
think of.
yeah, I know that one.
But it's really basically the science of how we make decisions.
Oh, I like
And
that.
it really gets into the psychology, so you can see why it would appeal to me. But it just helps you understand how humans actually work. Which again, predictably irrational is a great way of putting it, because we do stuff that seems irrational, but it's actually not, and it's actually is pretty predictable. So that's one. Another one I like thinking about the standpoint of like this whole idea of life journey and process is Designing Your Life. I can't remember the author's names offhand,
I'll write that down
but
too.
it started as a Stanford course, and they have actually an online course now too. But the book is great. There's so many good ideas in there for how you can go about one, thinking about what matters to you, and two, building some potential paths, testing them out and stuff. So that I think for anyone who's at a crossroads, I actually just was talking to someone the other day who is probably not quite at a place for coaching, but I pointed them to that. I was like, this is probably the resource that you need. So that's another one that I recommend a lot. And then like God, there's just so many.
Dude, I
The other
think
ones
I think three's a wonderful number.
okay, cool. Well, we'll leave it at 3. Yeah,
That's my little life hack, dude. I interview guys that are smarter than me at subjects I want to learn about, and say, "What's some good books, man?" And then it works every time, you know. And dude, I lived through good to great in becoming a consultant. I shut down 2 really good businesses to do this. It was terrifying, and now I've got great. Now I've got what I set out to do. So, one more question for you, buddy. All right, so this show is based around handing knowledge to the people that are a little ways behind us on their entrepreneurial journey. So I want you to think back, if you would, to Steve when he was just starting out his practice in his psychotherapy. What is one piece of advice that you would like to give that young entrepreneur today?
Find a way to be more committed to your vision and compromise less on it,
Oh, I love that.
because
Yeah.
you'll make your journey shorter. Because like if I there's some things I could look back and be like, if I had just really dialed in my niche super early and just committed to it, it would have been scary as heck at the front end. Probably wouldn't have made that much of a difference in the real short term about revenue, and longer term it would have produced a much more stable, much more fulfilling practice sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell that's some really great advice, Steve. Man, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today, dude. Real quick, where can the audience find you online? What's the best place to go and see what you do and to follow you on all your socials?
Yeah, so totally. So best place to grab me online is stevemccready.com, and that is MCCREADY. There I have actually I'm a little old school. I have a email list, and it is actually a daily email, but
Oh,
the thing I
wow.
always tell people is it's short. It is not, it is short, it's sweet, it's a single concept or idea. And that's my goal with it, is to give you something that you can take, digest, think about, and get on with your day. It's not some big deep thing, but people can sign up for that on my homepage. That's the place to get it. If you search for my name on Instagram, you'll find me. I'm not real consistent there. Track me down on LinkedIn, where again I post occasionally, but these days I'm mostly off of social media. Honestly, I'm mostly focused on engaging with people on my list.
Yeah.
And
Can't censor an email list, mate.
well, that's true. And it's just
Yeah.
one of those things of, I just want to really, I don't want to play the games, the algorithm games.
Correct. Dude,
I think it's frustrating, not my thing.
like, we just opened up our email list about a week ago, finally, for getting around to it, and we've added over 300 people in under a week to the email list. It's got to be the way to go. When I look at content and distribution and stuff, owning your own data and owning your own lists is absolutely the way to go. So yeah, man. Dude, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today, Steve. I've really enjoyed your insights, and I've really enjoyed what you've had to say to the audience, man. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you're very welcome. And again, thanks for having me on. I love talking about this stuff, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Who's on a similar path. It's always fun to jam on it, and so I'm hopeful that your audience will be able to take some good stuff from us.
Steve, it was my pleasure to have you on the show, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, that was Steve McReady. I really enjoyed talking to him. If you enjoyed the show, please go to his website, show him a little bit of love, sign up for that newsletter, and learn a thing or two. All right, that's going to do it from us for today. The links are all in the show notes. You'll be good. Stay safe, and I will see you this week for Friday Fire. All right, guys, that wraps up another episode of the Small Business Surgeon podcast. I hope that you have taken away some valuable insights from today's show. If you did and enjoyed it, be sure and hit that like and subscribe button, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're serious about growing your business and you want to be a part of a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, just go to followsam.live and join our free group, The Clinic. All right, I'll see you next week.